Very busy day on Capitol Hill. Actually, your colleagues on the House side are set to vote on whether or not the president can continue this war, if he should withdraw from Iran or put the matter before Congress. But I'm a little bit confused because the president's Secretary of State said yesterday in front of the Senate that the war was over, wanted to roll S5 first, and I'll get your reaction.
Mr. Rubio, you
Well,
keep
some said
telling
the
us how
war is
we're winning this war. The president keeps saying,
Well, the war's over
completely
now.
annihilated. The war is not over. And yet the American people see how we're losing at the pump and with their costs, and yet this thing still hasn't been resolved. Every day he tweets out, oh, we've obliterated them, we've annihilated them, they're going to surrender. But yet we still find ourselves spending billions of dollars a week
Senator
on
Booker,
a war abroad.
you've gone way over. And
It would be nice if we had hearings where people
Thank
had to
you,
be held
Senator
accountable.
Booker. Senator Scott.
So, Senator Paul, is the war over? Should Congress now vote on it because it's not over? What's the truth here?
Well, it's kind of confusing. Some say the war is over and some say the war never started. There never was a war, nothing to see here, no war here. It is very confusing, and the American public are sometimes perplexed by this. The soldiers that give up their lives to fight in these wars, I think, are sometimes disappointed that they've been told it was a skirmish, or they're not really sure it's a war, or it didn't really count as a significant enough war to vote on in Congress. When this debate came up over Venezuela, we saw the Office of Legal Counsel, this is the president's lawyers, that whether it's a Republican or Democrat, always argue for executive power. And they argued that a constitutional war is not a constitutional war unless there are significant casualties. If that's the definition, though, then you'd have to wait till a war really is fully sort of commenced and ongoing and the casualties are mounting before you could decide whether it's enough of a war that it should be declared. I don't think that's what the founding fathers intended. You know, from Hamilton to Madison, the full spectrum of founding fathers, they all spoke very clearly and with one voice and said that the initiation, the declaration of war should not be left in the hands of the executive, that vesting this power in the legislature was a much better way to try to prevent and contain war. So I disagree with all these people that say, oh, it's a muddled definition, there's not a war, there is a war. When we are going to war, it is very clear when we are going to war. We went to war in Venezuela, it was short and swift, but it was a war. We went in, bombed their capital city, and absconded with their president. The war in Iran, same thing. Absolutely, without question, is war. We've dropped more ammunition and more munition than you can count on Iran. So of course it's a war. I would say now, though, the debate is beyond that. I've argued and voted for the War Powers Act because I think we should declare war when we go to war. We still keep having these votes, but now they say the war is over. And there's another debate we're having about ending war. And there's an author back from the 70s. He was an undersecretary of defense policy under Reagan named Fred Inkley. And he wrote a book called Every War Must End and said that basically we're very good at preparing for the first battle. We're inept at preparing for the last battle. And that we sometimes have a disconnect in that we think military victory resolves a problem or leads to political resolution. And this is what I asked Secretary Rubio yesterday, is that really this is the disconnect. We have absolutely and ultimately obliterated their military. We have conquered Iran militarily. We have won the war. And yet the things we want, we're still unable to get. We would like to see them get rid of their enriched uranium and never start the program again. But really, even after winning the war, we are still going to have to negotiate. So I am pleased that Secretary Rubio and the Trump administration are negotiating. There are some in my party, I don't want to mention any names, but Lindsey Graham are opposed to any kind of negotiation with the terrible, evil, awful regime. But really, when you negotiate an end to the war, they aren't your friends. You negotiate with adversaries you don't trust. But one thing you wouldn't have to wait and trust the Iranians on would be if they were willing to get rid of and export their 440 kilograms of enriched uranium. So, but if you want them to do that, defeating them militarily wasn't enough. They still want something else. They want relief of sanctions. So my recommendation to the secretary was be full-throated, offer as much sanction relief as we can possibly offer if they will export the enriched uranium, and then they'll let us monitor them. We could always put the sanctions back on. And it's been my opinion for years now that the sanctions themselves don't actually work. Iran's not changed any behavior because of sanctions, but guess what? They might if we remove the sanctions. So removal of sanctions actually has some impact and can have some effect. Sanctions themselves almost never have any effect. We have hundreds of sanctions on China. They haven't changed any behavior. We have hundreds of sanctions on Russia. They haven't changed any behavior. But really, as you go to end a war, if we're either going to end the Iranian war or end the Ukraine-Russian war or be part of that, relief of sanctions is part of what you offer to one side to get them to settle. And this isn't understood by some of the more primitive members of my party and of the political scene. They believe that you should never give in. Everybody who trades anything in diplomacy is Chamberlain, and it'll be Munich in 1939. And so that kind of simplistic thinking leads to perpetual war. I think Trump's instincts on this are pretty good. I think he does want to end the war. And so I've been trying to encourage those who are negotiating to, yes, let's offer trading sanctions relief for removing enriched uranium.
And this is where it's difficult because the prime minister of Israel, who talks to the president frequently, does not seem to want the United States to give on those questions. Mark Levin, who also seems to be talking to the president very frequently, has criticized that as well.